All right, welcome back to episode 48 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. We are on the eve of 11.1.7, and we are desperately seeking content. Kind of interesting that we're getting a patch, and that we're all just like, but there's not really much to kind of talk about this week. It's a little bit surprising, but I don't think that the 0.7 patches have been overly impactful. Squishy, how have you been doing this week?
I went on vacation, man.
Where?
I went
Probably
to
a good time for it.
Yeah, I went to North Carolina. I just got back this morning at 10 a.m. I rode roller coasters. I rode Fury 325, best roller coaster that I've been on so far. That's it.
I don't know anything about roller coasters.
Too scared to get on it. I get it.
Yeah,
I've never actually ridden a roller coaster. As the cat of the group, I'm scared of fucking roller coasters. I think maybe, I mean, to be fair, like in hindsight, maybe if I went somewhere now, I would. Like, I don't think I've ever been to a place since I've been like 14 or 15 that has roller coasters. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would try it just to try it now. Like, I don't think, but back then, dude, as a kid, I remember I was super scared.
They're fun.
Well, that's fine. I mean, Fury 325, 325 feet in the air. Would you do that, girl?
Probably not. Like, that wouldn't be my starter roller coaster. I might have to feel things out. I remember a random, since this is the off-topic no WoW episode, random story. Like, this is like a memory that scars me or whatever. My parents make fun of me for this. Is when I was a kid, maybe like 12-ish. We went somewhere in Florida, like one of the big theme parks or whatever, and I was like really, really scared of roller coasters, and my dad kind of tricked me on to do one, and I was like, like scarred and super mad about it, and I'm like kicking and like stomping my feet and being all angry the whole time. But like later on that day, we were going to, I don't know what it was basically like some sort of like video game Hall of Fame thing, like just some Omega Kids dream location.
Yeah.
But my dad didn't tell me, he just said I would like it. And I remember just screaming the whole way, I'm not going in that building. I'm not going in there. You're not making me. I'm sitting outside. And my parents are just laughing. And then I like eventually realize what it is. I'm like, God damn it.
Dude.
Yeah, I'm a non-roller coaster main.
Side note, I mean, since we are talking about off-topic stuff, this is definitely the right time to be going on vacation. Is it good for the game to have like these dead periods where there's like 2 months in between every single patch where there's not a ton to do?
Well, okay, so two things. One, I think, obviously, no, right? You'd love to just have infinite things to do all the time.
Yeah.
But they, like, until there's a game that puts out as good of content as WoW does, faster than it does, I'm not going to complain, right? Like, as much as I would love for the patch to come faster, them to do more stuff. One thing, it does feel a little weird that we don't have any information about the patch, but I was sort of thinking about this.
You're talking 11.2?
The next season, basically,
yeah.
right? The next raid. And part of the reason is because I think at least they're kind of testing this like little drip feed, different sorts of content things. And I feel like it would feel like shit if we knew that there was a bunch of awesome stuff coming. And then instead they're like, all right, here's Dastardly Duos, here's Horrific Visions, here's Turbocharged Delves. And then while we know there's like some, crazy ethereal raid and like this new dungeon and blah, blah, whatever they're cooking up, I think it would feel really dumb and people would be a lot less excited for the content. So I think they're kind of waiting for all this stuff to run its course. And I think as all of the other content creators and streamers that you've been seeing, I think we're expecting something very, very soon, because how could they not?
Yeah, I think
last week.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say last week's everybody's stream title was like PTR question mark PTR question mark. I mean, this week is also PTR question mark. It's just like everybody's just guessing when the PTR is going up, and eventually they're gonna be right.
Mr. GM was to blame for that, right?
Yes.
Because he's normally like a data. We both thought exactly the same thing, but he put something in his title one day about it, and he's normally like a in the loop data miner guy, and so it's like if you see something on Wowhead, right? You're like, okay, this is gonna happen. It's like when you see him or like Towley or whatever say something, usually it's like unnecessarily credible, and everyone just assumed, okay, PTR, it's in Mr. GM's title, but it just wasn't, and there's nothing going on.
It's so interesting because I remember whenever I first started playing WoW was kind of pitched as like the only game that you ever needed to play, and as expansions have gone on, they've kind of moved to a more seasonal based model where you kind of you kind of come in and out, or maybe you play multiple versions of World of Warcraft, right? I think like the average player in 2025 is playing SOD in some capacity, will jump onto hardcore realms in some capacity, jump into the retail season whenever it starts. And I think that they kind of bank on those things kind of working themselves in, and they weave those seasons into one another pretty well.
It's good. Like PoE has seasons, Diablo has seasons. Like if you didn't get to excuse me, if you didn't get to have a break between those seasons, like you'd burn out so fast. But you play those seasons because they give you enough time and you want to play it, right? Like that's the whole thing with WoW in this area. You play WoW because you want to play WoW.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. And if there's other games, you know, like the Xbox Game Pass right now is cracked, it's a great time to not play WoW instead of feeling forced to play WoW, and then you hate WoW because you need to get powerful, and then you miss out on some sick games.
Growl, I have a question for you. I feel like you've probably played the most ARPGs. I think we've started to see a more increasingly large population of players who are playing current retail WoW, basically stating that they want a more ARPG model of the game where it kind of launches with zero friction, zero restraints, no key depletion, no crest cap at the very beginning of the season. You could just grind out all of the gear from day one. Do you think that kind of a game would be successful, or is it just not what WoW is?
So there's that key depletion question wrapped in there to trap me in the comment.
Well, no, I think they're all kind of combined. I don't think it's just like.
So one thing I think that I'm like starting to learn is very common is like any sort of friction that people are going to complain about, right? And so ultimately, like all of these things people are going to feel as friction and feel like they want them gone.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all bad. I'm not saying just key depletion, but things like crest cap, or for example how they don't release the mythic raid right away and they give you a week to like do the story and the quests and stuff. There's lots of different ways that they introduce friction and slow you down, and when you're waiting for something it always feels bad and you always want to complain about it to go away,
right?
I don't know. I think it could. It could. The problem is, like, basically you look at this season and you look at like last season as well. I think I had really fun playing Mythic Plus with both of them, but also my time playing Mythic Plus is not as prolonged. Like, I really do feel like, the artificial way that they lengthen out the season with needing like, oh, it needs to be Tyran and then Fort and then the right push week and then you need the right gear and you need good vaults, and like it really did feel like every time it was a push week it was like, oh, we could do keys.
Sure.
Whereas like nowadays, like I bet you would probably agree with this statement. A lot of other people, like, if once you get Resil 20s, like you're pretty much done with this season, right? Like that's kind of like the end goal for I think most people. Like, do you see yourself in a group like trying to push 21s? Like I don't, at least.
No.
Right? Like, but I don't think I would really say that in any other season where I like have a goal and I'm like ready to stop and I actually mean it. Normally it's like the IO is just endless.
Pushing towards your goals are fun. Pushing against the theoretical key cap is not exactly the most fun thing, is what I will say.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Working to perfection. It's like, watching speedrunners. Teddles, I know you watch speedrunners at least. Girl, I'm not sure if you do, but it's like they're looking for that perfect run, It's just like Super Mario Bros. 3, like that run is optimized to so close to perfect at this point that you need a functionally perfect run, or good RNG even, or stuff like that. It's just like the higher you go in key levels, the higher the amount of time that you need in order to get that successful run, which becomes less and less fun, right? It's like if you're playing an ARPG or anything like that, at some point the level that you care or the amount of time that you need to get an upgrade goes past the limit where you don't care about getting that upgrade anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Growl, this question kind of also started and stemmed from Turbo Boost being so fun this season too, because like it felt kind of like a shot in the arm where everything, whenever they launched the Turbo Boost, I didn't know exactly how it was going to feel whenever they removed the crest cap and they gave us 6 item levels and they changed a bunch of different restrictions on what is the game around, what was it, like 8-10 weeks into the season or something like that. But it felt really good whenever they did it.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually I was out in the streets with Jangby with one of his buddies. We were doing some keys, and he actually made a funny statement, and I laughed about it. we were talking about how in LFG it's like basically, I don't know what it is in EU, but in NA it's like 18s are like, there's tons and tons of 18s. Like obviously you have to be giga high rated to join them. Very few 19s or higher, and they get depleted very quickly. Very picky, very quickly depleted. Like there's a huge gap between 18s and 19s, it feels like right now. And we're talking about it, and he just goes, "Dang, we need another turbo boost." Like, what if Blizzard just next week just, oh, here's another 6 item levels, like, just keep going. Like, I don't know, maybe. Like, what if it would be kind of a ridiculous season, but what if they really did just like everything uncapped on day one, and then like, 4 different times throughout the season there were just turbo boosts, and it's like, if you're having fun and if you want to, get the juice and then do another key level, even though it doesn't mean anything, or get a better parse or clear the raid a little bit faster. I kind of wonder how that works for parses. Like, are people, because I know a lot of people really, really care about raid parses, but it's getting divided so many times of like, all right, pre 0.5, okay, post 0.5, okay, now there's the turbo boost, okay, now there's the delve belt. Like, it feels like eventually you're just gonna be like, you're gonna get a good parse, right? Like, I don't know, it feels a little more like raid is like, we're talking about Mythic Plus, but I feel like the same kind of thing is happening to raid too.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Fuck.
I had something like to follow up Growl, and maybe you'll remember what you're gonna say. It's kind of an interesting dilemma, because what you were saying, where they have like 4 turbo boosts in the middle of the season, it's kind of this question of, is it a good thing if somebody ends up hitting or getting close to what is their theoretical skill cap on the season? Or are they going to immediately quit the game if they get too close to what their skill cap is, especially if you unlock all of the gear from the very beginning? We saw this, I think that I saw this from some people, or at least in my circle, really, really early on in the season, where you got up to those 16s, and those 16s were very difficult. And if you hit that cap, right, what you feel like is your cap at the very beginning of the season, that means that kind of creates this feeling that you've already done and accomplished all of your goals for the season. And I don't know if it would be necessarily good for the game or not. It's kind of an interesting thought process.
Yeah, I've already seen with the turbos, people are like, oh, it's no longer a push week, it's now a push month, because you pushed in the last month of the season after they put in all their buffs with like the ring and now the belt and all this kind of stuff.
Always has been. Like what?
I mean, that like, regardless if there's extra things are there, that's the month that you're going to push, because all the strats are pretty much finalized. People are the most experienced. That's when you're going to push, like, because it's just that makes the most sense. And it just gives you more time to do it. And regardless, like, I think if they did a turbo boost every month, 90% of people would love it, and the remaining 10% would hate their life. Because they constantly have to play a game. They feel like they have to play a game that they don't want to play, and have to continuously push up for the title. I feel like the casuals would love a turbo boost every month.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would necessarily be a bad thing. I do think that there's kind of this consequence. If you end up reaching what is your skill cap, then the game becomes a lot less fun. But I mean, it's kind of like Growl was saying, like, you could try 21s. 21s have been done of all the dungeons, but you're not.
I just had a brain blast.
You're not going to do 21s.
You ready for this, Cook?
All right, I'm ready.
Think about how hilarious this is, okay? So we're talking about time gating and crest capping and stuff. In theory, what we're talking about is actually the most ultra mega time gated season of all time. It's not the freest season, right? Because imagine if the crest cap, right now it goes up every week, right? And then eventually it gets uncapped. Now it goes up every month. Imagine if crest cap only went up every month, and then that sounds terrible, right? But oh no, the crests are uncapped, but then after the first month there's a turbo boost, and everyone is boosted, and now you can unlock more crests and make you know what I mean? Like it's effectively doing the same thing as having an omega time gated crest system, but instead, because the way that you word it and think about it, it feels like it's uncapped, and they're just giving you all this, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of like, not Rested XP the guide, but this is like a really, really common story, but basically like Rested XP the system in WoW, and the idea that initially the way Rested XP worked in the WoW beta was there was a punishment where if you play all day, you gain less experience. And the more you play, the less XP that you get, right? See, and that feels terrible, right? That feels terrible. And everyone complained about it, right? So then Blizzard came back and they're like, all right, we have a new system for you, okay? if you don't play, you get bonus XP.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, wow, this is great.
Well,
It's
dude,
like, well, you
Keystones-
just did the same thing, but everyone is just, you know what I mean? Like, imagine rested XP from now on, whenever you like think of that system or use it, it's actually a penalty for playing too much is what it is.
Keystones have the same thing. Imagine if instead of the mobs got stronger, you just got weaker. You had less HP.
Yeah.
You had less HP. You did less damage. You just became closer and closer to being an amoeba at every single dungeon level.
Which is what Fellowship does a little bit, right? Then don't they have those negative modifiers? That
Well, they have negative modifiers, but the mobs also get stronger. So
the mobs also get stronger. Yes,
it's kind of it's kind of like an asynchronous thing where
I agree.
You're not going closer and closer to becoming an amoeba.
Yeah, it's actually hilarious that it just depends on the way it's packaged, right, and the way it feels, because genuinely, the people who are like yelling about crest caps or time gating or whatever, if you told them everything is uncapped and there's going to be 4 turbo boosts like in between the season, they would probably love it. And it's just the same thing as like this terribly month-long time-gated crest cap. It just depends on how you think of it, right? Like, because you see the end and you know that if you come back later, there's that cap, it like doesn't, I don't know. Maybe it's because it was a surprise patch, and if you knew it was turbo, I don't know. It's funny to think about at least.
Do you think they do Turbo Boost again, now that everybody knows about it?
Yeah, I think they should too. I think it was actually a hit.
I'm actually really interested on how it goes too, because I think that I agree with Tettles, and I also agree with Squishy that because they already did it, if people are expecting it, I don't know if it's gonna like feel as good.
I mean, they need to uncap crests at some point during the season, regardless, and I don't think that there's necessarily a downside of giving all players +6 item levels at the exact same time that you're uncapping crests.
Yeah. I think maybe the only thing I worry about with the whole turbo boost idea or like delve belt, this and that, is for people who play like and this is a lot of people that play WoW, right? New patch hits, they play the game, they play for 1 to 2 months, they do, you know, AOTC, whatever, KSM, whatever goals, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go play something else, right? I don't really want to push high keys or mythic raid. That's a lot of people, and so their catch up in terms of being able to come back the next season can't be very bad. Like, you know, if you're somebody who's like a heroic raider and you're doing 10s and you only play for 2 months, like, you shouldn't feel like you have to play the game for like a whole week just to like farm out a bunch of crests to get your guy ready for the next season. I think they need to consider some sort of I don't know how exactly it'll feel, but they just need to consider some sort of like catch up or like way that, you know, they can maybe like a really easy way to get crests, or like a turbo crest boost on the very last week or the pre-patch week or whatever, where it's like you get quadruple crests or something.
Dude, okay, I guess the other question is like, you know, that dead week that we never really have on that topic, like how everything was super fucking weird the week of 11-1.
Yeah.
Where everything was old, but you couldn't upgrade your crests like at all.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
The upgrade vendors were season 2, but all the gear was still dropping season 1, so you couldn't do anything with it. It's just like, ugh.
Dude, but that week, there was a meme where I took a Spy Masters out of my Dispriest vault, but I didn't care because I wasn't raiding anymore that season, and everyone was like, you know, mad at me because like, oh, he's so lucky he got a Mythic Spy Masters and he doesn't even play the game. He's some hardcore idiot. And well, the funny thing is I didn't upgrade it, right? I just took it out of the vault and sat it there. Turns out that Spy Masters was like pretty BIS for Dispriest until you got like a really, really good trinket this season. And I couldn't upgrade it. And I come back to the game and I just have a like, you know, whatever. Obviously it's still pretty high because it's a Spy Masters, but it wasn't max myth track or whatever. And it was like, what is this?
Yeah, my thought was like, Turbo Boost, I think it'll be successful in the future. But I feel like we also had pretty high favor to Shadowlands Season 4 the first time. I feel like the first time Faded came around, it was a pretty good success. And the second time it came around, people hated it.
This feels less drastic than what Faded was,
I agree. I mean, nobody considers Shadowlands Season 4 real, which I guess is part of it, whereas Turbo Boost is very real. So, like...
Well, I mean, I guess we don't know this. I think it's speculated that we're not supposed to be getting a season 4 of this expansion, or at least it wasn't on their roadmap. I guess we don't really know. I would be shocked if they kind of did it again after the reception that they had last time. But assume
I just don't think they have time based on their roadmap.
I don't assume that. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of part of it too. I don't assume that they have time. But I think a turbo boost, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if our 11.2 ends up being slightly longer than our 11.1 was, just because they're kind of trying to get the new expansion ready. And I think a turbo boost is probably something that's like pretty good to help continue to allow players to achieve their goals and make them a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any issue with, again, giving people that shot in the arm halfway through the season. And I actually think it's made raid. I know I started raiding like halfway through the season, but I think it's made raid in a farm state actually pretty solid if you are killing like mythic raid bosses this late into the season. I think that giving the additional damage amps from the Renown track and the turbo boost gear and having the deterministic loot from the Dinars, I think it makes farm pretty reasonable. And farm has been,
interested to hear,
farm's been so fucking hard the last couple of expansions.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what people who like raid have to say about this, because I'm somebody who I like progging raid, and then as soon as raid prog is done, I'm over it. Right? I just don't want to. Yeah, right. So I've always been of the idea that like I really, really hate farm, and I think farm should be like turbo easy. And I think that the easier they make farm after you kill bosses, the better and more fun it is. And the more likely it is for your guild to be able to like stick around, for people not to quit or get frustrated, your ability to bring in trials, to get your ults. Like there's so many good things about making raid farm easy. I'm not saying they need, obviously I think Mythic is a little bit too hard too, but specifically farm, I don't know, do people like, hard bosses and coming back and being challenged every week? Like, one of the things that I always attributed...
No, you don't.
No, yeah. I think that too, but one of the things that I always attributed Classic, like why people like Classic so much, everyone says, oh, it's easy, but specifically, farm raids in Classic are just a joke, right? Because, I mean, like, it's, you just, basically just mash buttons. I mean, people are AFK, like, it's so easy, and I think that's one of the things that, like, keeps a lot of guilds alive. Like, I have people that I played with in the original hardcore, so like 2 years by now, who I still see on my friends list logging on and raiding on that server. And it's just like, at first I'm like, how could they do that? But it's like, why not? I mean, who cares? You just log in, you're doing Molten Core or like Nax or whatever. Like you just, run over every single boss, and it's super easy. And I think that making farm raids easier, and this whole like everything together with the adding player power in the middle of the season, having the raid Renown track where it's like buffing you up. I'm not really sure like, I don't want to exactly say like, for the late cutting edge people how that feels, but as a farm raider, it's so good to just like mow down the raid and not care, and like, oh yeah, sure, you can bring your second mage to the raid or your rat evoker, or hey, let's bring our friend in the guild who helped with splits who wants their trinkets. Like, it's been so, like, compared to the last 2 seasons where you remember me literally wanting to pull my hair out about the raid by the end of the season. Like, now I'm totally vibing in this raid. I have no problems logging in.
Are you Jank B or are you Priest?
Both. I've been mostly playing Mage, but usually for like Gallywix and or Mugsy, sometimes I'll show up on Priest. But we're talking about doing a second raid just to get more people geared, because why not? Like, we cleared it so fast, and people want to log in and play the game, so it's like, well, let's do an alt raid, so I might split and play both.
Nice.
I actually did kill Gallywix on my Mage for the first time like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Oh
yeah. We were doing 2-hour clears too before we took a break for a little bit. Squishy, would you change the loyalty rewards club to anything? Is there anything that you would do differently moving forward? Because I actually think that the raid Renown track, I like it. I don't know necessarily how everybody feels about it though.
I like it, although I do think that even if the benefit is tangible, it should have some benefit. I don't like putting the mounts on the Renown track alone. Like,
what do you mean?
I feel like if you're going to have every week be something, it just kind of feels a little rough to get 1 week just be a mount. Because it feels like the raid Renown should be something, even if it's like movement speed while out of combat, like, something small. Doesn't even need to be power, just like utility. Like the jumper cables, like, oh dude, I'm gonna miss the jumper cables. Holy shit. I forgot that was part of it. We're gonna miss a lot of quality of life going to the next tier.
I assume that a lot of it's gonna stay. Like, I see a lot of them bringing back a lot of the things that they use, like the fast food buffs and all that. And I don't know, like, yeah, I sort of see what you're saying. Like, it feels really weird going into the raid. Sometimes it's like, oh, we get 3% damage and we got a delve belt, and it's like we're doing, versus the last 2 weeks where we got nothing or very small things. And it's like, yeah, maybe if they like smoothed it out a little bit where you get like 1% damage every week and then random rewards here and there or whatever. It does feel a little, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure everyone in the comments is going to call you an idiot and say the mount is the best reward there is. And how could you say that's a boring week? But
the mount is cool, man. That dino mount, it looks good.
I think he was saying that you should be getting the mount from somewhere else, no?
Just like, I think the mount can be there. It's just it should be tied with something. Like, you're hitting the max rank of the loyalty Renown and you get a mount. Like, I feel like maybe, you get the final capstone. Like, it almost feels like like the old school talent trees. I guess kind of the new ones as well, where you put in a talent point that increases Moonfire damage by 3%. And it's not like, it's just like boring. I want something a little more interesting. Like, I'm going to get this mount that is going to go like a +1 in my collection. Great. And it's not like I can get it earlier than other people, so I can use it for a week or two before it, becomes popular. Just everyone's going to get it that week.
Yeah, we should be able to bloodlust twice in combat.
I agree with your take, but I feel like everyone's going to say this is an L. Everyone's going to say this is a squishy
I don't even think this is an L take. Like, what?
Okay, like, you can keep the mouse there. Just, I guess the biggest thing is the 20 should have been something cool. More than a mount. Like, a combat benefit more than a mount. Just like let people fucking finish the season and just have a good time.
Yeah, like the double lust thing is, it's like a kind of
double
crazy...
lust actually kind of sounds legit. Like,
yeah,
that's really funny.
What was the do you guys remember the original Horrific Visions, that buff that you would get whenever you would like kill lieutenants? You just be like super juiced for a little bit.
Oh,
yeah,
Gift to the Titans.
Yeah, the Gift to the Titans. That's what it was called. Yeah, imagine if you got like that occasionally in combat, or some just like random buff proc or something like that. Yeah, I think it could be something that's insanely OP and still, fun.
Yeah, I think I worry that going a little bit too far, people like eventually you're going to get to the point where people will not like the integrity of it. Like, for example, let's say you just made it so easy that it was LFR, right? And anybody could just go into the raid and get cutting edge.
Sure.
People would get mad about that, right? So at some point, like double lust, that might be like, like something. I mean, to be honest, to me also that sounds fun as shit, but I definitely see at some point. Yeah. And again, maybe it could be a like an unlock, to know that you've done the raid on farm or whatever. Like, if you've cleared Gallywix, you get the double
on that difficulty. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about the Renown system, and maybe my guild is just idiots, but it feels a little weird. Like, it felt like there was a lot of friction with the whole earning the rep. Like, I kind of just want to go into the raid and just have this week's thing, where it's like, it creates this weird thing where like, you actually want to like log in on Tuesday and then join some random raid or LFR and then like kill a bunch of bosses and then get the rep. And then you like, but it's not super clear about how it works. And like certain bosses give certain amounts. And then like, it's just there's just a little bit of friction there, and I feel like I think it should be either you just log in for the week and you get the reward, or I like the Dinar one with how easily straightforward it is, right? You take a quest, the quest says kill 4 bosses, you kill 4 bosses, you turn it in, you get it, like something like that, at least, where it's like more, I don't know, more obvious and straightforward.
Oh, the rep's not attached to looting the corpse of the bosses and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like there was other issues where like I remember there was a bug where like some people got stuck. There was a bug where some people got max renown and they were on their mounts like during Prague.
Oh yeah.
That was a good one.
I think we kind of all agree that it's pretty good. Actually, very, very good and like pretty close to perfect. There's maybe some small stuff that we'd like to see.
I'm like, first question, like, are they gonna bring it back?
They should.
But if they do, like, are they gonna keep the same utility stuff? Are we gonna get faster food? Are we gonna lose it? I almost think they should rotate it. Like, rotate, don't use the jumper cables. As useful as they are, and as much as I like them, like, rotate into something different.
Mass summoning.
Maybe just as useful.
Mass summoning
could be, yeah, exactly. Like, that could be a thing, or like a teleport to another raid member outside of combat if you don't want to do mass summon. But like, I think there's just a lot of cool things that they can do and just kind of rotate out the utility and just to see what the players prefer.
Hold on, let me cook. I gotta cook. What if instead of like, faster food or something like that, they gave you a file that you can use in the raid, and you never actually have to use any of the file consumables from alchemy. Instead, you just have this juice, like this super juiced file too. There's some stuff.
Yeah,
save some gold.
I mean, the augment rune dispenser is probably not I mean, it's a very, very Liberation of Undermine thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I doubt that's going to continue unless there's a random like.
Do you know what the theme is for next patch?
Everybody's saying ethereals. I don't follow the lore though.
Okay.
Not on depth.
Do you know where the raid is? Like where in the world it's located in? Oh,
no.
Listen, you shrugged, but like I don't know. You would know.
Dude, I don't follow the lore at all.
Couldn't tell us, or wait, are we supposed to know?
Well, no, like it could be public.
Dude, I don't fucking know. Like
I think what you need to ask then is, do we know? Because do you know and do we know mean different things when you're asking.
Okay, okay. Well, I know that you don't know is the thing. I know that if it's gonna be any of us three, it's not you or it's not me, it's him.
Dude, I don't know, man. Like I know there was that scene at the end. Everybody thinks it's like void and ethereals, but like past that,
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Dude, all right, editor, cut to the clip of us last week talking about tank threat, because tank threat's been buffed by 15% in the latest hotfix. This is really funny. Whatever this happened. This happened like what, on the reset or something?
No, it's just a random Thursday.
Yeah.
Wednesday morning.
I think that this is good. I've seen some people be like, it's not enough. They also will state that there are fundamental issues with how threat works. I tend to agree with this, where it's like it's not an issue of 15%. The threat was too low by 15%. It's an issue of, my DPS is doing 9x the amount of 9x the amount of damage after his blood beast explodes. Or my Ellie Shaman's first global was Tempest and he rips the entire pack off the tank. It's not something that a bonus threat modifier is actually fixing. It's like tanks, if they're hitting the pack, the pack should just be glued to them. But I think that complaining about this would be ill-sighted, because I mean, this is just trying to band-aid something that we are experiencing just as players.
It's, first of all, it's not actually 15%, it's 14.8, but it's close to 15, and I rounded.
Okay, great.
But yeah, just in case you were wondering. But I'm not gonna go into threat rant again. We know how it is. That's it. It's threat.
I mean, it's.
Yeah, I think we all agree, right?
Like, I think the buff is good.
Like, no one's gonna look at that and say it's bad, right? Like, one of the biggest problems with threat is when you're a tank and you're in the pack and you're doing damage, and some DPS is doing a lot of damage, and they pull threat on a bunch of mobs at the same time. That's a problem. And this is like going in a direction that helps that, right? I think, if we were expecting a big threat rework and we go into the next expansion and then they're like, we're buffing tank threat by 15%, it would be an extremely disappointing announcement. But the fact that they're just like kind of throwing a bone right now, being like, okay, people are complaining about this, we kind of agree that it's bullshit, here you go. Like, I don't mind it. I think I appreciate the gesture, I think, given that, like, what did we expect? A giant blue post rework of threat in 11.2? Like, that would have been out of nowhere, as much as we would like that.
I think, yeah. I mean, they were never like reworking.
The question is, who was it? Because everyone always has. This is the biggest thing about the commenters that I'm starting to realize, that the commenters think that we have all this power about how the game changes. So who was it that got it changed? Because I swear it's got to be Dratnos, right? Like, Dratnos just made a video. That video popped off. Blizzard didn't really listen to the video. Like, they kind of just looked at the title and the thumbnail and, like, skimmed through the highlights, and then they're like, all right, tank threat, we'll buff it. But I think it was
no. It was clearly us. No, it was clearly us.
Us?
It was clearly us. Me specifically.
Common bench W.
I think one of the biggest things that the commenters are concerned is when I spew off on my dumb rants, or like I complain about things that are mostly important for high keys, and they're like, don't ruin our game or don't make the game worse for us. It's like, you guys have to realize Blizzard does not listen to me. Like, they don't care at all what I have to say. I'm literally just one civilian in a field of civilians to them. If anything, like, they look at my opinions and like things that I say and like laugh probably. So I promise, guys, don't worry. I appreciate the discourse about issues and resilient keys, but if you're worried about Blizzard sitting here, all the Blizzard employees in an office, and they have a notepad out and they're writing down, wait, what did Growl say? Go back. How did he describe it? No, they don't give a shit about what I have to say.
I mean, I agree, and everybody's paying
any more than any other random person.
That's what I was saying.
I'm not saying Blizzard doesn't care or hates me. I'm saying, like, I'm just one cat with a waffle on his head in a sea of all of us animals with different things on our heads in this Azeroth.
I mean, that's why posting feedback on forums and giving feedback is kind of important, right? Because if people's experiences are different relative to what they're experiencing in the game. Not
you did respond on Twitter though, Tettles. We all saw it.
Wait, what?
You responded on
that
Twitter.
guy, okay, I did get pissed off randomly this week. I'm not bringing that up.
I just did.
I'm not, dude. I'm not talking about fucking resilient keys for week 15 just to have our opinions be misrepresented once more.
Yeah, check out Tettle's Twitter to see what he posted on resilient keys.
Oh no. All right, let's talk about the Titan.
Boy.
The D.I.S.C Belt. What's this thing called? The Titan D.I.S.C Belt or something? Yeah. Okay. So
It is called.
Yeah. In other news, we basically got Circe Circlet, the Onyx Amulet Part 3. So we have a new item that's coming out on this patch. It is a belt that contains a socket, and in addition to the socket, it also has it's time gated in terms of the item levels that are gained, but it's it's not time gated in terms of getting it. And then you can get specific proc effects that are varying levels of good or god awful depending on what you end up selecting. I think the one that's like the best for everybody is this Charge Bolts one. I think that pretty much everybody had this simming the highest for them for DPS purposes. I mean, is this any different than Circe Circlet / Onyx Amulet that we've seen in the past?
It's whatever. I mean, like, from my perspective, they seem really dead set on this idea. I'm not sure how people are perceiving it. For me, it's just kind of whatever. But they've done it over and over and over now, right? They've done Circe Circlet, Onyx Amulet, this. Like, it's very clear that this is a sort of like formula or thing in the game that they want, where they, towards the end of a patch, release something that's good, gives you a small boost, and also is something you can use in the next season. I don't know if it's strictly to incentivize you to like do the content or whatever, or like a boost. To me, it doesn't. This sort of stuff kind of misses me as a player, where like I don't feel like it's really for me, and I don't really understand it. But it's like, kind of whatever. Like, you just do your small amount of chores, you get your thing, and then you just do whatever you were doing before.
So first of all, I don't know that many people know this. The thing is time gated.
Yep.
Just the upgrades are time gated. Just the upgrades.
Just the upgrades, not the actual powers. So it starts at, I think, 6. What is that?
90 or
92?
something?
I don't remember. Either way, you have to upgrade 91.
Yeah.
You have to upgrade it all the way to 701. Over, I think it's 4 weeks now. It used to be 6. And it's just going to take a little bit of time to do that. So that's kind of annoying, but like, it is what it is. Just like Circe Circlet, and you upgrade it. And then unlike gems or anything that you deal with, all you do is you right click the belt and you click the thing that you want. You can change them. All you do is you just click the thing. Very, very simple. But in order to click the thing, you need to unlock the thing. In order to do it, you have to do overcharge delves. However, I have heard that you can do it on a +2. And you don't have to do it on a +8 or +11, so
nice.
You can just kind of spam run them until you can get everything that you want.
You need the delve.
So it shouldn't actually take that long.
You need the delve currency, don't you? The undercoins or whatever.
I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure right now.
Gotcha. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is probably just not for me. It just is what it is. You're just gonna get it. It's just gonna be marginal player power. It's not gonna feel good or bad. I think it just is what it is.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of an extension of, if you're the kind of guy that just logs in and does whatever, and like, you did all the delves and you got the achievements, and you're kind of like, it may be something else for you to do. Like, that's sort of what this patch is for. I don't know if this is the player, like the gamer in me that just says don't attach player power because I don't want to do it, but I kind of feel like if they had like cooler cosmetic rewards, it would be better for that player base, and not, you know what I mean? Like, what if they're like, if they added overcharged delves and they added some new cool achievements and mounts and stuff, that I feel like people would like that better than if they added this and it was like, oh, here's this belt you get to use. Like, is the person who's logging in and like chilling and mostly enjoys solo content, do they really care about this belt? Like, that's what I guess what I don't understand is like, when they do the turbocharge, like, it's aimed towards the people who are, okay, I'm doing Mythic Plus or raids and I want to gear up my guy, and so you get crests and then you upgrade your stuff, right? But then it's like, for the people who are doing that solo content and delves, and like, for the same type of person who would enjoy overcharged delves, I feel like this is like a weird reward for them, no? Like, it's kind of like making people like us go into overcharged delves as opposed to boosting the gameplay of those people.
I mean, it gives you a better piece of gear.
Yeah, like, reward-wise, this is the best in slot belt now. right? Like,
I
just like
guess
Cersei.
it's just so small though, right? Like, I don't know.
Compared to a
it's small
max
if you have myth.
yeah, compared to a max myth track belt, yeah.
But if for alts or anything like that, like there are people that are still using Cersei's right now at myth track at Tettles.
That's a good point, I guess. If you can pretty easily obtain it and like get it on a ratty character, I guess I can see why that's a good reward.
Yeah, like I think it for alts, it's great for catch up. Like,
Yeah.
fantastic.
You described it as chores as well, and I mean, we all live through Torghast, the chore hub of the world. I don't think that this is intrusive enough for me to kind of get up in arms about it. You know, it's this thing that you do probably is going to end up taking a couple hours in total, and you get a D.I.S.C belt that's good up until probably hero track next year, maybe a little bit beyond that.
No, definitely no complaints for me. I have no problem with it. I just sort of think that like
it is whatever,
but the reward is weird. Yeah,
I think the alternative is like, I think they're probably sitting in a boardroom. They were like, what are we going to put in the 0.7 patch? And they're just like, we don't really have like big content ideas. And they're just like, what if we just gave them this like pretty small reward, just kind of something to do over the course of a couple of hours that they kind of have to log in for every couple of weeks. I think that that's kind of how this was spawned. And it's hard for me to get super excited about it because that is what it is, right? You kind of sniff it out, but that's what that's what it is. But at the same time,
that was sort of what I was saying is formulaic.
Yeah,
right? They've done it a few times.
Yeah,
now.
I think formulaic's a good way of describing it.
But they definitely like Squidgy mentioned, they removed a lot of the like they're continually removing any friction from it. Like, you know, you don't have to go and buy these gems or do this. Like, it just everything is there once you unlock it, and you just probably like, you know, get it on your alts when you fly over there when you talk to the lady or whatever.
Oh, the gems were especially early on nonsense. All right, what if I'm gonna start? I need to bank up some faction transfers for my characters. That way, I can double up on getting the belt upgrade.
Oh no.
Oh gosh.
Oh god. Okay, so there's something you said there, which is we said there, which is that the belt is really good for catch up, right?
Yeah.
And it may last into the next tier.
Yeah.
Do you remember the old blue post about Dinars? When they were like, we don't want people getting items that are above their level or something like that.
Oh yeah,
that will disrupt the gearing process of the next tier or something like that.
Yeah, because I remember Growl was saying that it kind of messes with the flow, especially if you're like an LFR raider and you got max.
Yeah, I can't find that post right now. I remember it exists, but I wanted to kind of compare this belt specifically to that post because I feel like they might be talking about the same thing that they're doing right now.
What do you mean?
Like, is this technically, by their words, not overwriting the gearing process on an item from the next tier?
Here, I gave you the screenshot that I know Squishy's referring to. Yeah, basically in their post when they were talking about why they were gatekeeping mythic trinkets from the mythic boss kills or whatever, they said giving players who don't normally engage in high-end content access to item level 680 plus trinkets would essentially obsolete those slots for season 3 for those players. They didn't write that, but that's sort of what they meant, right? Like if you're not a mythic raider and you get a mythic spy master, sort of like I was saying earlier, right? That's like BIS for you for a while until you get a really good trinket.
It might be BIS for you next season if you're only doing normals and LFR.
Right, exactly. But then now here's this, right? This is a belt that's exactly what it is.
Which is what they did with Cersei's. Now, I think reading the full context here, which is why I think this is important. One, they say trinkets. And trinkets are a hell of a lot more powerful than a fucking belt. Right? Like House of Cards, until they nerf it, which they are going to have to do by like 25% at least, is going to be...
Relax.
Like, it's going to have to be a massive nerf. And if everybody had it, like, I can kind of understand where they're coming from. It's very different to a belt. They specifically mentioned trinkets. I get it.
I think that this is because it's 3 pieces of gear versus 1.
Also true, yes.
That's fair. And also, you know, they might have written that knowing that they're giving us this belt or whatever, right? And then they're like, okay, well, if you have the belt and Jasper Diamond and your 2 trinkets, right? Then it's like you're really
hear me out. I don't agree with their logic on the Dinars stuff. I think it's not fantastic. But I defend, you know, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I mean, I do think that there is a slight difference. Now it's not a very large difference here, which I think is the important part, because they are giving you this, I mean, dude, I wore Cersei's circlet. You still wear it in raid as Moonkin. Like, is that really fun?
I don't think it's going to be that powerful. I can't imagine, because the issue with Cersei's circlet was it just gave you stats, like a fuck ton of stats, right? Mastery scalers
Belt's
got a lot out of it.
Belt's a low budget piece. And
it's also only like 3% above. Like that should pretty easily get scaled over.
You get like 1% total damage gain. Okay, I think if you're wearing like an equal item level belt, I think it's not like 1%. I think it's like 0.7 or 0.8% damage, which it's hard for one belt to gain 0.8% total damage on your character. That's kind of the right. Like you need to be able to move your entire character's item level by 0.8 just from the belt slot alone to be able to gain that much power. Which, you know, what is that? Like probably like 30 item levels on a belt or something like that?
Yeah. All right, random question. Can we put a bet on how much they're going to nerf House of Cards for the next year?
I think less than Kezan. I think Kazan's getting a bigger nerf.
Bro, all right.
Okay. Let's put down some numbers. We'll come back to this episode in the future. Let's throw down some numbers. I can go first. I think 25% on House of Cards and 20% on Kazan.
I think they'll do it bigger. I think it'll be
bigger.
Well,
what do you think of it?
I think they'll start at 25%.
Yeah, I think a third would be a better number.
A third for both.
But we've entered Growl Extreme Rant territory, bro.
Okay.
I have Kezan. I know Squishy probably hasn't noticed because you're out doing normal people things. Tettles already knows that he just starts laughing. I hate Eye of Kezan, man. I am so sick of this trinket. This is the absolute worst meta in high keys ever. So if people aren't familiar with how this works, basically they made Eye of Kezan. The way it works is it stacks up while you're in combat, and then when you leave combat, it depletes and you lose the stacks rapidly. If you can keep it at misc stacks, that is the best trinket by far. By like, you know, you're basically using like it's so good. It's like 50% of another trinket. That's how powerful it is, right? It is so good to have an Eye of Kezan full stacked. So the way people play Mythic Plus now is it just turns everyone into an absolute ape. Every single person in my keys now is a zoo animal, and I'm so sick of it. Like, bro, everyone just pulls everything. It's just you walk by a mob, oh, my Eye Kezan pull, meld, like, oh, we'll do a skip where a demon hunter will pull a mob away, and everyone in my group just runs at the mob and taunts it. Oh, we only have 4 shadow melds instead of 5. Okay, I guess we'll just play bubbles with the pack now. Like what even is this going on? I've had 2 different situations. One situation where we pulled a pack that we didn't need to. And after the key, I explained to my team, we didn't even need to pull that pack. Like, it's better if we did this. And he said, well, I needed my Eye of Kezan, so I just pulled it anyway. It was a damage gain. Which, my head just exploded, right? Thinking that pulling an extra pack is somehow a damage gain. Not even about funnel, just like a pack with a caster in it. Another time, this is one today, they were kind of memeing, I guess, but we kill a pack, and as we're running to the next pack, we noticed our DK DC'd, and he's just standing there, right, AFK in the pack, and we're about to do, you know, the double Oracle, double Diffuser, Lust Pull, and Rookery?
Yes.
Like the second Lust, basically.
The one before the second boss.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we're walking to that pack, and we noticed our DK DCs, and our DPS just says, Kezan waits for no one. And we just pull the pack and just fight it in Lust without even seeing where our DPS is or if he's coming back. And we just die. To be fair, the guy did end up DCing and didn't come back for a while. So it's like, what, you know, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But, bro, I've never seen people turn into such monkeys. Like, if it wasn't so hard to get into a group or make friends in this game, I would literally go on strike and say I'm not going into a key if anyone has a Kezan. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous how people are playing now with that thing. People are literally like changing routes completely.
It's dog shit in pugs. I think it's actually inherently fairly well balanced because it is so unusable in pugs, but the high upside on it is crazy.
I think a risk reward trinket that in Mythic Plus is actually kind of cool. Maybe that's me speaking weird. Like,
yeah, well, so all right, let's go back to the commenters, right?
Okay.
When I say I hate Eye of Kezan, this is just my perspective. I'm a human who plays the game, and this is a podcast, and that's what you're listening to. I'm not trying to tell Blizzard to do anything. I'm just simply voicing my opinion about things. So actually, you know, I kind of agree with you, right? Like, from a bystander, it's hilarious, right? As someone who's like, or as someone in a casual Keystone who's like, you know, not really that high of a risk reward, it's probably fun to play around sometimes or to think about, but yeah, it's terrorizing my life, basically. As a healer, I'm completely terrorized.
I believe it.
It is intrinsically the most well-balanced trinket for Mythic Plus, right? Because if you play around it, it's broken OP. and if you don't, it's complete garbage, right? But I think it's more like the way that you're forced to play around it if you want to. That creates this kind of gameplay loop that's not fantastic, and it also really incentivizes everybody to be a Night Elf for Shadow Meld as well, which...
Well, it's like every time we kill a pack, first of all, as a healer, right? I have this thing called mana. I know Disc Priest doesn't really need as much of it, but sometimes every, once in a while, I would like to drink. And gain
just Meld
mana
drink,
back,
idiot.
Right? Right, so my meld is gone now. I can't even use that. I need to think about using my meld just to drink. And so, okay, let's say you're in Cinderbrew, right? And you're pulling those stupid little bees that do nothing, and you drag one little stupid bee along. Okay, this isn't so bad. But it doesn't matter what the mob is. Your team will drag in. It doesn't matter if it's, a mini boss, if it's a boss, if it's a miserable caster. They'll just, Kezan! And so there's like a dangerous caster that casts a group wiping ability, and my whole team is just full sprinting to the next pack while that mob is sitting there. And I'm just, priest. And that's the other thing about it, right? Is everyone has to go at 100 miles per hour now. I've never seen people care more about efficiency and moving pack to pack and like going fast in Mythic Plus until now, and I'm a priest. Like, bro, it makes me want to play like, I don't know, any other healer that has mobility, because I feel like I've never, like, sometimes, okay, so I play with Dorky and he goes fast, and I feel like sometimes the guy who's getting dragged on the leash by the giant bear and I'm holding on for my life, I've never felt more like that with almost every single good tank I play with now. I'm just literally getting dragged by the seat of my pants by a leash all the way through the dungeon, every single dungeon, permanently in combat. And dude, they need to delete that trinket. I guess there.
It's a high end only. It's certainly a high end only thing.
This is high end only problem. This is a high key only thing for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if maybe people are getting terrorized. I did play a pug where a guy went to, like, after the first boss of theater, he went to the gore chop wing and just took the guy and just ran. Like, we didn't have a DK that could steal him or anything. He just took it, and is like, his tank needs his Kezan.
Kettles, just to wrap things up here, give me the percent that you think Hawk and I are going to get nerfed.
I think that they're both going to get nerfed by 25% in the first round of tuning. Blizzard's going to see that people are continuing.
Total before the patch comes out.
I think that it's going to be 25% before the patch comes out, and I think it's going to get re-nerfed again after the patch comes out.
Fair enough.
Squishy's writing these down right now.
Right, so Squishy has the 25 nerf, I have the 33 nerf, and Tettles has the double nerf.
Well, yeah, I mean, they nerfed Spymaster's Web by 25% the first time, and then everybody continued to use it, and they go, you know what? Have another one, 25 more. And I expect the exact same thing to happen here, where Kezan, they nerf it by 25%, everybody continues to use it during Heroic Week, and Blizzard goes, another one. One more, actually. You know what? That wasn't enough.
I'm hoping they learned. And they go a little bit.
Did you say Heroic Week?
Oh, well, all of the week that everybody does Heroic on.
I see.
I don't know anything about a Heroic Week. There's no slip. I don't know. You got inside information? You want to spill something?
No, you said Heroic Week though, so I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, the week that I do Heroic on is Heroic Week because I'm not actually able to go into Mythic that week.
You might now.
We're gonna start raiding more than 12 hours. Like, I'm not gonna have enough time.
Okay, I mean, you're probably gonna kill the first boss at least.
Depends on how easy it is, maybe.
It's been easy.
Richard Reverb was a beast. You remember week 1?
That's 3. What?
Well, they could make the first. Historically, the first boss is harder than the first 3. Last couple of expansions, it's kind of been like that. That's true, yeah.
What?
Have you not experienced where the first boss is harder than, like, I feel like the first boss of Amir Drasil was harder than Volcaros.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But what's Vexy?
I don't know, kind of a meme, but, like, could be hard first boss. You never know. Listen, I don't know anything about a Heroic Week.
Rick Reverb, the third boss was ranked harder than Gallywix.
Yeah, that was... I don't know about all that. Having killed Richard Reverberations, I don't know about all that, but... All right. You guys see this Chinese interview where... Basically, there was an interview on Billy where Morgan Day was talking through... China had these dummy testings as like a nationwide contest where they would pit 2 professionals of a specific class against one another and see if they were able to do see who was able to do more DPS relative to one another. It was kind of a cool thing, right? Basically, they would
that's actually super cool.
Yeah.
Like that's not just kind of cool. I think that's actually super cool.
And part of it too is that they had Morgan Day on, and Morgan Day was just basically giving a monologue style thoughts on classes and class balance and each individual class and how they're kind of doing right now. I thought that this was actually incredibly interesting just for Morgan Day to be looking to do in general. And then they kind of talked about all the classes, you know, where there were some very interestingly received ones where they're talking about DK. How DK is like, yeah, DK Death Grip has a lot of player potential to save the day and stuff like that.
Of note, though, that this was before 11.15's tuning, so it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a while ago. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I glanced at this. I actually didn't see this. I saw the article and it was cool, and I might go back and listen to it. I think that class balance is an interesting one. I do want to say though, currently, is this a bold statement to say that this is the best class balance in Mythic Plus has ever been in the history of the game?
I'm right there with you, and in Raid as well, we are almost at historic low amounts of variance. I mean, there was a Wowhead article by Anch the other day that said that there's a less than 6% delta between top 5 and last place DPS in the War Within and Raid. That is like historically very, very low in terms of damage variance. I will say, you know, if you start looking at meta or Mythic Stats, I think is the actual website for this. If you start looking at like the spec diversity in the top 2,000 runs, it doesn't look as good as you would kind of hope.
Well, yeah, balance. Wow, what a weird thing, right? It's almost like I've been telling people this, that the actual class balance doesn't necessarily reflect, oh, what are the top people doing?
Yeah.
And just because everybody is playing a spec doesn't mean that, oh, this spec is so much better than every other spec.
But then you go look at Raider.io and you look at role leaderboards, you look at tanks. I mean, there's, I think, there's a bunch of tanks that are in the top 40 that aren't just.
Well, okay, so I know this isn't fair. But I think if you filter out China, it actually looks a lot better. Why, I don't know, but like if you were to look at NA only, for example, I feel like the spec diversity is actually really, really good. I don't know if that has to do with people making alts or if it's because, you know, why exactly. You know, obviously they're very competitive and they're very high up in the leaderboards.
EU is only Vengeance Demon Hunters, man. Like.
Okay, maybe it's an only an NA thing, I guess. This might be like, you know, LOL, like NA, but I like, to me, like looking at the people around me and like my peers, it seems like it's very, very diverse. I think
I've yet to experience a season that is where you have multiple. It's very rare. Like you might have some specs that are good. It's incredibly infrequent that you'll have compositions that are structurally in how you play the dungeons very different than one another, and you can play these full fizz comps that play through things like there's Brewmaster Monks and Protection Warriors that the full fizz comps play through, and that's incredibly uncommon. Multiple healers are high rated, where you still have Ellesmere pushing on this Holy Paladin. I mean, if we look at all healers, it's a lot of Disc Priests, but you do have some Restoration Shamans, and again, you have Ellesmere on this Holy Paladin. Ordemus is playing Mistweaver Monk, and so it's definitely possible to play them, where in a lot of seasons, it's not that it's not possible, it's that, you know, the best players are going to immediately re-roll off of these specializations because it's such a lost cause.
Yep. And where's Og in Mythic Plus right now? I know it's like actually okay in Raid.
People don't play it. There's definitely
around with it,
a sense against Og. People do not like Og. Like I remember tweeted. I remember, so they basically made a patch where they buffed Og, and I saw a lot of previous Og players on my friends list kind of like dig up their Og and try it again. And I made a tweet about it, and people were super angry at me. Like basically, there is a very big stigma against Og. People will not like Og, and I feel like they need to like let it slow burn for a while, and they can't have that spec be good, or people will get very angry.
I think people Handshake didn't want to play it this tier. It's a little bit different than like. Because like the comp that you want with Og is a little bit more flat of a composition. You don't want it to be as polarized. So you wouldn't really want to play with an Unholy DK. You wouldn't really want to play with an Arcane Mage. If you're playing Og, you'd probably want to play like Enhancement Shaman Moonkin Og again. And it's just like people are just like, no, I fucking CBA.
Yeah.
I don't want to play that.
Did you read Morgan's comments on it?
On what, Og?
Og.
No, I actually didn't. I did see what he said about Druid though. I kind of laughed. So strong out of the gate, well represented.
Yeah, because he talks about Aug, I believe, at the very end. He says, regarding augmentation, they got a lot of changes going to Season 2, and there's room to buff them, which has since happened repeatedly. Though given how strong they were for so long, the team is okay being a little more conservative at the moment. So they're okay letting it be a little weak, which kind of lets other specs shine. And I think that's perfectly fine. And I also think it's what the majority of the community wants.
Yeah, that is what people want. I think that it's a tough situation in WoW where people are very competitively driven. They definitely care about playing good classes and good specs, even if the edge is small. And there's so many of them compared to how many slots there are, right? And in a 5-man Mythic Plus group, it's like, you have whatever the quote unquote meta comp is. It was talked about a little bit on a rival podcast that Dorky mentioned, but I just wanted to emphasize it and kind of have people think about it when they're out on the streets or playing. Is one of the big things actually, and I think the biggest reason that the meta proliferates so much is not even because of class balance, but because of strategies. Everybody is so sort of like, okay, what did the top team do? What did Yoda's group do? Whatever. And then everyone kind of copies their route. So you go into groups and dude, every single group I join, someone pings in and it's like, perplexed route, dorky route, whatever, Yoda route. And it's like, well, unfortunately, a lot of those routes involve these, skips of like, oh, we needed to have Mind Soothe here and we needed a DK to grip these mobs. It's always funny to hear people talk about the DK raid buff or whatever, right? And it's like this season, there's so many dungeons where I'm in a group and we're like, we need to have a DK. We can't do these pulls without a DK that can grip in these mobs.
You definitely
but
can.
Then also, right? But then also people will say, oh, but actually DK's grip is a joke of a raid buff and it needs a real raid buff, right? And it's like, well, when a class is meta, everyone always points to the things it has and they say, well, you need all these things. But the reality is like lots and lots of classes bring a lot of different things. And, unfortunately, the issue is that if you deviate from the meta and you're trying to do anything challenging, you have to come up with your own solutions.
Yeah.
If you go into a key without a DK, well, then you can't do this pull. Well, then, okay, now you don't have enough count. Like, are you just going to eat it and do it 2 pulls separately or what? And it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess, right? Like, a lot of people just enjoy playing the game and they don't really give a shit about trying to come up with strategies. But if you're somebody that enjoys sort of like innovating or thinking about things or whatever, like, like I mentioned earlier, the game is really, really well balanced right now. And you can actually do a lot of different things with a lot of different classes. And I think, like, one of the most obvious examples is that, dude, right now in LFG, people go in, they literally just invite a Boomkin, a DK, and then a Mage, and then a Disc Priest, and then they just pull 10 casters, because Yoda did it, and then it's like, all right, now we got to chain CCs, and it's like, bro, do you know how hard this is?
Yeah.
Like, dude, we're doing these pulls in Priory when we were doing our 20 the other day, where we actually needed to do grip into beam, and then CC the pack long enough until beam is up again, and then beam again. That's how long our CC chain is it actually went into 2 beams. And we were running mass polymorph on our mage as another stop. We were doing triple mage stops, and I think he might have even had Ring of Frost in an emergency too. It might have even been mage.
That's
4
terrible.
stops.
That's terrible.
So we could do beam into beam, which is
what were you stopping, out of curiosity?
So basically in Priory, you just do these pulls that have 4+ casters.
Oh, it's just the spam casters, right? Like,
yeah,
not like you're not like locking out recasting something.
Yeah, basically the priests that do smite and the there are some that you need
this is the first pull of the dungeon is what this is referring to.
I just missed what dungeon it was. Because if you were locking the elementals in Floodgate that recast the heal thing, like if you lock those out, it'll never cast the other thing.
Like, yeah.
Regenerative kelp or something.
Yeah.
Wait, so if you lock
does it not?
I'm not sure.
I think Jettison's on a different school of lockout than the regenerative kelp.
No. Like if you stun it, it continuously tries to cast regenerative kelp.
Oh no, I think Jettison will cast over top of that.
Does
sometimes.
It?
Sometimes.
There are a couple things like that where you can continuously stun it and it won't cast anything else, but it's like the volley in season 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, Growl will spam shackle on the mobs in Theater of Pain, the Arbalists that put the Jagged Coral on them.
Yes.
You can spam shackle on it and it will only cast Jagged Coral over and over and over again.
Yes, one of those.
Yeah.
Like those ones I feel like are affected by the stop change, but like just stopping a bunch of fireballs and smites, not affected by the stop change.
Yeah, that's definitely a players being too good type of pull for sure.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. It runs into this problem of like classes have way too many tools and players are way too good now that you can just go into polls and do stuff that's like wild.
I mean, we talked about like tank deaths last season, or like tank survivability a little bit, and I mean, the one way that you can mitigate this is making the mobs just beat the shit out of your tank, basically, right? Put a tank buster in every single fact. But we saw how that felt to play, and that was terrible. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But honestly, but to wrap it up though, and to give people a little bit of hope, just because that like it's hard to come up with strats doesn't mean that the strat is going to be harder, right? Like one of the things I think that you can just run a bunch of characters with like short kicks, especially having a healer that has more stops and kicks than a freaking Disc Priest. Everyone's complaining about how OP Disc Priest is, but your life is a lot easier if you have a Resto Shaman or a Druid or a Mistweaver or anything that isn't a priest that can stop stuff. So we were doing this MDI route in Priory that I was mentioning, right? And we had Dorky had to go, and we invited a friend, Jangby's friend from the streets who plays DK, who's very high rated, like as high rated as I am. And after we did the route, he messaged me and he laughs and he's like, "That was fucking crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, no one really does this." He's like, "My group is just 3 melee and a Resto Shaman, and we just go in and just mark a kick, and that's just all we do. And we just play a pack and a pack." And this dude's like timing 20s. Like he's not like, bad. Like he's like, it might be the best thing to do. Like I can't wait for Pugs to figure out that, you run in and you just mark 3 kicks and you just kill stuff and you invite Outlaw Rogue and people are playing Arms Warrior and Feral Druid and stuff.
I think that playing with the best people is always the most OP thing. Like,
yes, especially right now. Well, not always, right? But right now it especially is.
Yeah.
Like right now with how good class, it's a mix of playing with the best people but also like making sure your classes mesh together.
You need
right?
a comp that works, right?
Yes,
you can't be
that's the biggest
You can't
thing.
be griefing your comp. We're not going to walk in there with 3 mages and expect to time anything. But assuming that your comp is like playable, play with the best people you know.
Yeah, although I did get a message from Greg after listening to the podcast. Shout out to Greg, and he mentioned that before we he's been doing this as well. He's like a very good tank player. He said he started inviting just like nonsense comps. Like he plays like 3 Ret Paladins and then just like a random non-disc healer,
a Resto Shaman for Bloodlust.
Yeah, and he said his success rate is like unbelievably better than what you would think it is. But also he said today that he played with a Feral Druid who didn't do 1 kick for the first 20 minutes of the dungeon. So, you want to have good players as well.
Yeah. I think the good players thing is important. But I think that the class balance this patch has been, I would say, historically pretty good. Like this is...
I mean, you mentioned in that talk he did at Nordic GameCon, it's like class balance has never been better. If it's actually 6%, like that is incredible.
That's unbelievable.
Well, that's why people in Mythic Plus now are playing around raid buffs so heavily, because the raid buffs give you a pretty small edge. Like Battle Shout's 5% attack power, Chaos Brand's 3% magic damage. You'll play around those raid buffs pretty heavily if the margin on some specs is like relatively low. So then you'll over-index into that physical profile and play around the attack power buff.
Yeah,
and then kind of same thing with the magic comps.
6% is approaching Final Fantasy level of Delta. Like,
I think it's a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit higher than that. It seems like
it's still higher, but considering WoW's raid encounters are very different than Final Fantasies. Final Fantasies are very scripted, no RNG, very like that kind of thing. It's a very different aspect of raiding that they're allowed. That the only thing that they really like, the big thing they have going for them is their class balance is so necessary to be perfect. WoW is not like that at all. There's a lot of other things that you can do. You have the twitchy movement to dodge all the fucking swirlies that they throw at you these days, and strategy, big overall movement. So,
I mean,
incredible.
One of the things that Morgan talked about in this interview a decent amount was like Spec's niches. How do you guys feel about niches on Specs and like having these strong points and weak points?
It's bad when it's required. It's good when it feels good. Sticks pre-nerf, Bandit pre-nerf.
It's so interesting.
Horrible.
I mean, he talked about Moonkin with Sticks Bunk Junker in mind as well, and he was like, "Yeah, it's awesome playing the Race World first, and it makes it a good spec." And then it's like, but whenever spread cleave happens all the time, then it's required and it feels awful. And I heard that because Moonkin was like god awful in the raid, but then they view it as required for Sticks Bunk Junker, and it's like, well, I don't know.
So. The answer to a lot of these questions is always just about time. If the bombs didn't explode, like you had to kill them within 30 seconds, otherwise they exploded.
Yeah.
If you weren't required to do that and you just had to eventually get them down, Boom Kid would be really nice for clumping them, but not required because you could realistically compensate. And there wasn't a hardened rage on the boss that was actually kind of tight.
Yeah, that rage was crazy.
Like you could take more time. You might have an 8-minute fight, which extends, the number of chances that somebody blowing you up by missing a bomb, but it's still possible. It feels good when you have a Boom Kid to cleave everything down simultaneously. There was they tuned it too tough. The throughput requirement was too high for it to not feel like a requirement. Same thing with Bandit. The throughput requirement was too high. You can't bring more people. You have to bring more Shadow Priests in order to
Afflock.
and Afflock and Devastation Evoker in order to kill the ads on time. That is not a feel good, that is a requirement. But where they got it to now, it's like, okay, you can definitely kill these in time, but it feels really good when you're a Dev Evoker and can triple cleave them.
Sure.
That's the difference to me.
As an M+er, I want to pull it's a high-end problem on you guys. And that, like, well, if you're not in a super serious guild that's doing 6 bunk junker on week 1 or 2, like, eventually that boss got nerfed and it was fine and it doesn't need mookins, right? But because you're like, it's sort of like me saying, like, oh, you need to have a disc priest in keys. It's like, well, for 99% of the population, you don't need to have a disc priest in keys. Does it feel good to have it? Yeah, or whatever. But it does, like, the higher end you go, the more it feels like you need something.
But I mean, the meta trickles down, like it or not. I don't think there's really much.
No, but it definitely does.
No.
It definitely does.
No,
but
I think Grau's right though. There is some level of, like, you are there so early that you are out of your skill level. But that never feels good if it's your Mythic Cluster raid.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I was talking about this earlier. Whenever you end up progressing key cap, and I mean, this is a good conduit to raid. Whenever you're pulling Brew Twister Ovanax and you got no business pulling that boss in that state, it's kind of the same thing as trying to prog a Mythic Plus dungeon that you have no business trying to time, right? You just, what are you going to do? You're going to quit. Like, they're just not. You could get better. But you're reliant on yourself and the rest of your group just magically becoming better, which is, it could happen, but it's not, most people aren't going to operate like that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. Like, it's one of those things that it adds texture to the game, so I don't want to complain to it, but it does work both ways. Like when you have everyone knows the feeling of a pug where you play with a class that you don't normally play with, and it feels great. Like, so I actually timed a 19 Floodgate a couple of days ago with Tracer, shout out to her, LaFlame, and some other people, right? And so
she was playing prop pally, wasn't she?
She's playing prop paladin, and then LaFlame is playing Destro Lock. So, like, imagine you go into a group and you have, like, people are like, oh, you need to play the metacomp for these keys. I'm out here struggling. And I mean, this is Jangby, right? It's not like we have the highest end getting carry group, but it's like, dude, LaFlame was blasting on Destro Lock. Like, nobody is, like, I'm talking about this game being really, really balanced, but still you see barely any warlocks. But, dude, LaFlame was blasting. Like, he was doing so much. I mean, obviously it's a little bit.
That guy's insane. That guy's insanely good.
Yeah.
And it's like to walk into a pug that I've never played with and time a 19 key with a prop paladin and a warlock, and I'm Jangby, and it's like, dang, like it does turn out that, like, you just need to. I guess my point was that it feels really good to, like, have good experiences with other classes, and it's more about, like, playing with people who are good rather than. But the problem, this is the problem, right? Where it boils down to, where I understand people's complaints, is it's LFG, right? Like, the LFG is always the problem. You have no idea when you just play with a random person how good or bad they are to spec. So why wouldn't you invite the spec that's 1% better? And that's what always happens.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, there's a reason that it's being played by the people at the top of the ladder. It's because it is more often than not the best tactics to be able to look to time the dungeon. Now, you might say that you don't need those tactics to actually time the key, and you should go for something that's a little bit more conservative, or something that's easier to play, or whatever. But there's a reason that those things are the best strategies, and there's a reason that the absolute highest end is consolidating into that composition, and it's for a multitude of reasons, mostly due to damage more often than not, or survivability, or a combination of both, probably. And at the same time, it's not that it's impossible to play anything else, but there's a reason that, like, and again, if you're playing in LFG, all you see is somebody's class, you see their score, and you see their name, you see their item level. You don't really know how good somebody is just based off those metrics. A little bit weird.
Find people to play with.
When are people going to start complaining about Prot Paladin needing Avenger Shield kick removed again? Because that was complained a lot about last season. But for some reason, people stopped talking about it. Is Avenger Shield not OP?
Just add it to the list behind Shadow.
Yeah, it's always funny to hear the people who are like newer into Mythic Plus. They'll ask a question like, "Is there ever a world where this spec isn't meta?" Right? Like they'll be like, "I remember when people were playing Priest when PI got added, and everyone was like, so there's never going to be a meta healer now ever in Mythic Plus except for Priest," which is kind of ironic because Priest is good again now. But for all of Dragonflight, it was like people were playing Resto Druid and Mistweaver and whatever, and it's like, I mean, it always feels like that's sort of the thing about the whole like every class has different things. Is it always feels like whatever class is the best has the best things, and you need those things to do the keys, but that isn't. Yeah, that isn't really the truth, but it's like, again, what's the evade phrase? Perception is reality. Like, well, if you have those experiences, right, where you go into a huge key and some warlock owns, right, it feels good, but it also feels terrible if you're that warlock and everyone is declining you, right? Like, I'm sure he has unnecessary problems finding groups compared to how insanely good that guy is.
Yeah,
we love evade.
Talk about LaFlame, I think, or was he talking about evade?
Oh, evade.
Both.
Oh yeah.
Well, both.
Okay.
Honestly, that perfectly reflects both, because Evade also struggled being able to play with Havoc, because Havoc essentially fills the same role that Arcane does this season, and
it double ups with
like,
Vengeance Demon Hunter, which is just like
right. So it's like, not only is Havoc kind of good right now, it's actually so good that apparently it didn't even make the Raider IO break the meta cut. But Evade, another season where it's like
funny.
Demon Hunter isn't even that bad, but he, what group is playing Demon Hunter right now? Maybe some like Fizz comps or whatever, but
I mean Fizz comp. I mean,
like,
you don't get their buff. Like,
back to Raid though. You mentioned like, is it required? Probably not. Like realistically, it was killed by the Race to World First comp, right? Like that is factually true. So there is some truth there. Whether or not something is required is very much up to perception. But I think a niche always feels good when you have it, and it feels absolutely horrible when you don't have it. I think it's the long story short for every single person, right? Like, Tettles as a mood kid would have loved Styx if he actually played it on Prog.
I hated every other boss.
Super useful. Yeah, exactly. Like, he felt super useful, except the single target sucked, so he hated his niche on every other boss. Like, niches are good if you feel good at least once per raid, in my opinion.
Well, then,
somewhere.
Well, then what about DK? I mean, what about is DK not good for the same thing? I mean, they were good on Styx. They could grip in some bombs. That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, grips week 1 or like week 2 were pretty good for Styx.
I think that there should be like a more consistent floor. I think with particularly raid damage sometimes, where it's, some specs can't fall so far where but I do think that the highs, like if you're good on one boss a season, it's probably fine. But like, I don't know, people were complaining about DK but DK was objectively useful on Styx Bunk Junker, but it was terrible everywhere else. Is that fine? I don't know.
I think it's fine.
Okay. Anyways, all right, we only got 15 more minutes. Squishy's got to, go do something. So let's get a move on to Q&A. If you want to submit Q&A for the bench, you can tweet @thebenchwow on Twitter, or you can DM me on Discord, and we can get some Q&A. For this week, we have a couple of questions. The first one comes from Lufer. He asks, something I would like to hear your thoughts about, and is just like, what are you looking at whenever you're using your UI? Why do you have certain things on the screen that you track versus not? I ended up getting the triple threat this season, basically tank, healer, and DPS in Mythic Plus, and I've never healed as high as I did this season. Highest key was previously at 12, and sometimes I have all this info on my screen, but I'm not necessarily sure why I track it. Even though send this to me. Even though you mainly DPS, I'm sure that you track very similar things to what a healer does as somebody who ends up shot calling a lot. And if you do this on the pod, Growl, what does he track as a healer? Maybe Squishy has some insight as well, since he's played AUG and Tank. So why do you guys track what you track? I guess it's a very interesting question.
I'll start.
You go.
Hopefully this doesn't go into the Omni CD rant, because I think it will, but actually I say hopefully, and then I'm gonna literally take it there.
We're about to start talking about Omni CD. Yeah, I think it's about to be.
So I see people, I remember hearing so much about everyone saying, oh, I need to have this information, or I need to see this or whatever, but it's like, the most important thing is you need to think about when you're playing the game, what's going to change your decision making. So like anything that you want on your screen that's going to be like, okay, this is here. Okay, this is going to change what I do, and I'm going to do X instead of Y. And anything that doesn't do that, we're like, it feels like it's nice to see, but you can't immediately say like, okay, this is going to change what I'm going to do, right? So like, for example, you can look at my UI. So one thing that I recently added is I have a section in the bottom left that has every group CD that I would want to call for. That's sort of like a raid AoE CD, barrier, AMZ, all that, right? And that's in one chunk. And I specifically picked out all of the things that are in that type of thing that I want to see. And that's because whenever there's a big AoE about to happen, I'm going to look there and I'm going to say, okay, what are the big things we have? And then I'm going to press my buttons accordingly. In terms of your buffs, I think buffs is a really, really common one where, number one, people track buffs that they don't need to. You know, you have some random buffs on your screen that pop up that aren't going to change the way that you play. Basically, every buff that pops up on my UI has a very specific, like, you know, most of the things you're seeing there are damage reductions that are in the middle.
Mhm.
Anything that gives me like a DR or like some sort of a damage boost where like I'm specifically going to need to put something in that window and I care about that timer down to the second. And then anything that it's never going to change your decision, you need to get that off your screen.
Why do you have your interrupt? Why do you have an interrupt tracker?
Well, that's a good question. You can see it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? Because actually with this season as a disc priest, I kind of don't really use it. I could actually completely take it out probably. You have some remnants of my mage UI in the top left because you also have my AoE stops tracker that I use with another group, right? So that's kind of stuff that if I was like, you know, super optimizing, I would maybe not. Like technically, I would probably change my Omni CD between my priest and my mage, but because I'm like, you know, playing only I would say seeing kicks is nice because it's nice to see when if all kicks are on cooldown, then I'm going to use my fear, but otherwise I'm never going to use my fear unless it's called for. But that would be in a more organized group thing rather than a you know, a pug thing. But I do think that like you do make it a good point that removing the kicks could even be something that you do as a priest. That's kind of a remnant of playing a lot of different specs and not wanting to have multiple Omni CD profiles.
I think that something you said is like having something, every single thing that's on your screen should actually be usable in some capacity. I mean, for mine as well, it's kind of, I mean, we're tracking pretty similar stuff where I have kicks, I have AoE stops, and then I have miscellaneous utility that I'm looking at most of the time. Whenever I'm looking at the stuff from Omni CD on the left hand side, I'm looking at shadow melds, I'm looking at group externals like anti-magic zone, mass barrier, powered barrier. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking to track whenever I'm looking at my Omni CD. More often than not, it's almost exclusively just like kicks and AoE stops. So those are by far the most important things that I have tracked at any given point. And then on the left side, we also have externals, but this is like a remnant of raid, where whenever I don't have Omni CD and RAID, I have like an MRT tracker for externals that I can call for if I need them.
Yep.
I think like this makes sense for their content you're pushing, right? Like you need to have those externals because sometimes your group's gonna get one shot if you don't have a mass barrier up or stuff like that. Like that is when you definitely need these kinds of things, and I think that makes total sense.
I think for like an average DPS, do I care to know? Okay, I would care to know about kicks. I don't think I would ever care to know about like the amount of stops that are available in a group if I was primarily pugging though. Like I don't think I would ever like, is it maybe useful knowledge? Yes, but I look at this, I think my kick tracker is probably the most common thing that I look at. Then it's probably my HUD, and then it's my CC tracker is like the third most common thing that I'm looking at on any given poll. And but I think if I'm just like purely pugging, I don't care about other people's CC.
Yeah, I think like the biggest things, like in order to determine what you actually need, the easiest way, honestly, is to turn everything off and then realize what you're missing. Because that, like, unless you have an eye tracker to see where your eyes are going, like, it's really hard to tell in the moment. You only really know what you use when you realize it's missing.
Is it valid to overtrack things if you're going to look back on things after the fact in a VOD and then be able to try to analyze some mistakes? Would you overtrack stuff then?
It depends.
I mean, like that's like a should you put stuff on your screen because you're a streamer, right? Like you have,
dude. I have this action tracker here. It's completely useless to me. This
yes, right. Yeah. So I think, you know,
unironically, damage meters completely fucking useless. Like it.
Yeah, everybody has them for stream. That's fine. Like it's in the bottom corners. Like if it's in the middle of your screen or like something like that, then I think it's an actual issue.
So a fun fact about my UI is before I started streaming, I've only ever really played healer, and I had details installed because people told me to install it, but I never actually had damage meters on my screen. I would only have I would have one details thing, and it would be deaths. And because I never look at it, like, what's the point of looking at anything else as a healer, right? And when I started streaming our runs, when I started playing with Dorky, that was the reason I added damage meters, is because other people watching my thing want to see them. But I would, I mean, Jangbi would have them. But
I actually think that damage meters are worse for your performance than they are better, because I find that people fixate on them a little bit too much and they're looking at them in the middle of combat.
Especially because you put them in the corner of your screen because you don't want to look at them, but oh boy, when you're popping off, you want to look at them. And so you're in the middle of your cooldowns blasting, and you're like, oh, I just got 4 procs in a row. Let me look at the direct corner of my screen.
You're not like looking at them, but you glance over at them, and that's like pretty bad.
Yeah, so a couple of small things. I think Squishy's tip is huge, and I think that for most people, that's exactly where you want to start, is be as minimal as possible. Don't think like, oh, this streamer tracks this, or oh, it might be cool to track this, I should put it on my screen. Literally minimal, remove as many things as you can, play the game, wait until you literally are at a point where you can't even make a decision because you're like, I don't know, this thing isn't on my screen, I can't see this, I don't know what I should do, and then like write it down or whatever, and then put it on your screen. And I think that for average people especially, minimal things is better, right? Like just focus on your own gameplay, focus on doing the things that you need to do. Like, so, for example, Title's pointed out the kick tracker on priests. I bet there are probably 95% of priests who play Mythic Plus who have a kick tracker on their screen and pretend like or say that they look at it, but I bet they use their fear literally a quarter or less of they should. And they should literally be impacts, fearing and interrupting all the time. Right?
Healers never fear.
Exactly.
Fear, but like,
so like, you see what I'm saying though, right? Like every priest is going to say, oh, I need to see this. No, you don't just walk in the pack and press your freaking fear. Like just look at your button and press it. Another interesting thing is, this is something that actually Evade got me onto. That's a great podcast to listen to, by the way, if you want to hear Evade improvement stuff. If you go to somewhere where I'm in combat here, so if you look at, I don't have a normal health bar on my screen, right? I only have my party frames, but my health bar weak aura is actually in the middle of my screen on my character.
Oh,
because as a healer, right? Basically, I'm always going to be looking at my frames. The only time I'm really not is if there's like a very intense situation where I need to dodge and I need to look at my character. So that's exactly where my personal health bar is. So as a healer, I actually don't like, my UI doesn't have like a symmetrical target health, my health sort of thing. I have a little tiny health bar on my character so I can keep track when I'm looking and dodging, and then the rest is just on my party frames.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing is just, I think a lot of people track more than they should just because other people do it. You know, what happens if I use, you know, if I need to know when my boomkin has bark skin up?
That's the thing, is like,
majority of time you just don't.
Yeah.
Well, like you don't need to see all. Like, dude, I see so many people tracking things that they don't need to see.
Yeah.
Like if you're tracking AOE CCs and you never call anything, like what does that information do to you? Like, okay, there's a pack and there's a cast going off, and you see that someone has roar available. Okay, well, what do you do? Like, how does that information help you decide whether or not to interrupt that? Like, if you have an interrupt, you're going to use it. Obviously, if there's some sort of pre-planned thing, then that makes sense. But for most pugs, like, dude, just go in and use your buttons and don't even bother your mind or clutter your screen with what other people can and can't do. Like, just really hone in on the things that you have and what you can do, and just do those things, and it will like dramatically improve the way that you play.
What do you think about Squishy? What do you think about people playing in raid without raid frames?
It's fine for most DPS. It's fine.
Agree. I think as long as either you have no res or you have a way to res people. I mean, I guess if you have a battle res, you probably need some way to like see.
You need the raid frames if you have a battle res. That's about it.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't know. I was kind of thinking like, I don't know, maybe there's some like weak aura where like you could, you know what I mean? Like some way that you could do it. Like, could you have a raid frame add-on like filter out where it only shows dead players? And then, I don't know. But either way, like, I don't know. I think it also kind of depends too. Like it's tough, right? Because if you're playing in like a super more casual setting where things aren't as scripted, you do want to. I don't know. I think, but then in general, you're probably not that good, and you shouldn't be trying to make decisions on the fly.
You're right though. Like I played AUG. He mentions AUG here. I played AUG all of like for a good chunk of last season and the season before that. For a while, I just didn't track other people's cooldowns, and I would just set my breath whenever the fuck I felt like it. Like I wasn't doing top tier keys. Didn't need to. I wasn't, for raid. I would plan those for obvious reasons because it was easier for keys. Like, you don't. I have the superpower of not needing to be 100% optimal. I know that's hard, but I would just send my breath and it would get something done. And that's good enough for me. Like, for just not the top end keys. Yes, as the higher you go, you need to track those things. Eventually, I ended up getting it for the high impact classes like Havoc, Demon Hunter, all that enhancement shaman and stuff like that. But a lot of people
pros
don't
and cons too, right? Like I bet your breath uptime is probably way better than the average person, right? Because they're holding and thinking and not pressing it, whereas you're just sending it over and over and over again.
I mean,
there are pros and cons to it.
Group externals are kind of interesting because until you reach the point of when the group externals actually make a tangible difference as to whether or not you live or die, it doesn't matter that your AUG evoker had Zephyr available and your priest or in your mage had mass barrier available. You died to something that was avoidable anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? It's not saving you.
Right. Well, if you're not in comms too, if you can't call for those things, then why even? See them?
I think I think
if you use them when you
If you, I think it's very different if you're in comms with the five stack versus like not in comms just as a solo player. Because like I think if you're not in comms as a solo player, you should be trying to make the best tangible action for yourself at any given point. This is mostly as a DPS or a tank, I guess. The healer's a little bit different because of how healer operates. But as a DPS or a tank, you should be trying to take the best possible action for yourself as an individual at every single point. And do not worry about other people and how they're doing their jobs. They'll figure their own shit out. Just worry about yourself.
Yeah,
huge.
All right. All right. I think we're up against the tiebreaker. We ended up taking a little bit longer. That we'll get that next question next week. Any final thoughts?
No.
Looking forward to a patch update.
Yeah.
Hopefully something comes out. I'm sure.
Hopefully next week we got infinite content. Anyways,
guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.